Large companies like Amazon spend billions of dollars on conversion optimization because they know that every little change that gets them a little bit of a boost accrues directly to the bottom line. Thankfully, with AI and APIs, you don't need an Amazon budget to optimize your store to get the same kinds of impact that companies like Amazon are spending billions of dollars trying to accomplish themselves. Today I want to share some of the things that companies like Amazon do well and what you can do on your store so you can get some of the boost yourself. To do that, I'm going to dive into a client's website as we prepare to take them from a pretty blah user experience that doesn't really convert to one that we think will be really sharp and best in class. Let's go ahead and dive in. When we look at an Amazon page, in this particular case, an Amazon business page, there's a lot going on that we may not be attentive to when we first look. In fact, it can seem downright overwhelming if we don't know what we're looking for. This particular customer that we're going to be working with sells labels, like the kinds of labels you might put in a zebra printer or on shelves in a warehouse, in addition to other things, but this is a core area that we want to talk about. Now, as we look through Amazon's page, and we'll dive into some areas in more detail, we can see that there's a lot going on. There is a lot of imagery, and that imagery is deliberate from the vendor that put these things on here. We can see that it's really easy to see units of measure and to switch between units of measure. We can see that it's easy to skim what the item is about. They've got similar items recommended algorithmically, things that are bought together. They're tracking your search history so that as you're browsing, you can see things that are related to what you've been looking at. They've got items organized by reviews, similar items with some specs, an AI assistant that can help answer questions, and then additional items that may be related and eligible for whatever promotion they're running. Effectively, they are doing a great job at one, communicating both visually and in writing what the product is and does, and two, they're using sophisticated algorithms in order to make sure that there is a cross-sell, an upsell, or at the very least, helping you identify the right product. Now, shifting gears to our client, who is using a more or less standard WooCommerce template, you can see there is none of the sophistication that we saw on Amazon. First of all, the image doesn't make any sense. It doesn't communicate any information, and there aren't any other images anywhere on this page. Secondly, the short description is not particularly skimmable. That block of text is way too dense, and there's no way to link down to the main description, which may not matter because they don't have really any other content, no recommended, no related products, no you've been browsing, none of that. So if you are a target customer and you're looking at this website and trying to make a decision about these labels vis-a-vis Amazon Business or any of the other competitors who I won't name, it's very easy to see why this shopping experience is not converting. Let's talk about how we might approach this a little bit differently in order to get them from an environment where they're not converting anything to one where they're finally selling and hopefully selling a lot more. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our visual game is on point. If we look at some of the kinds of items that are reflected on Amazon and other websites. One, it's really clear when we look at some of these other items what the actual dimensions are of the particular label that's being purchased. It's not just about creating a nice graphic, it's about conveying information in a very dense amount of space. In both of these examples, we know exactly what we're getting with this particular label. In addition, what this vendor does well is it does a really good job of calling out what these labels might be good for. All of these are reflected in this area here through a carousel in order to make it easy for people that are browsing very quickly to understand what they're getting and whether it might work for their application. Some people may have questions around unit of measure and how many things come in a case. Another website does a really good job of doing this by treating the images not just as a graphic, but as a way to communicate information. We can see very quickly that when you talk about 16 rolls per case, they're going to be stacked 4 deep, and there are 4 by 4 rolls. very easy to see at a glance what's coming in this particular unit of measure. Another company did a really nice job taking this a little bit further, and they show what this can and cannot be used for. Again, all of this visual information is de-risking the probability that I buy the wrong thing or the wrong amount of the wrong thing. When you're in a B2B environment especially, the costs of getting some of this information wrong can be much higher than a consumer who's just buying something for fun. In both cases, you don't just want arbitrary product images, you want these images to convey information reflective of and consistent with the goals and questions that a user might have. The images should really be doing a lot of your selling straight away. Another quick note, neither on the Amazon page nor on this page is there any video. We would also suggest to this customer that we put video on there. Now, an objection that this customer and others might have had in a pre-AI world, and actually may even have today when they don't know much about AI, is that it's very difficult or time-consuming or expensive to create the amount of images that you need. Enter tools like fall.ai, which has a plethora of different AI tools that are specialized in product placement and product editing, in addition to tools like Nano, Banana, Sora, or others, which can help you cast even more vision. Because these operate at an API layer, there's even a way that you can automate a lot of this, though certainly human oversight would still be necessary. The final comment I'll make about images is that as the internet becomes increasingly vectorized, see my other video on this topic, these pieces of information are no longer, quote unquote, just helpful for humans in order to understand what they're looking at and what they're getting. This information, once vectorized, will also be communicating to search algorithms across all platforms the level and kind of information that you're making available, leading to a denser vector footprint and ultimately increasing your visibility across search engines of all types. Moving on to the next level of information presentation, I want to look at how they communicate something as complicated as units of measure. So in this particular case, our current way of communicating units of measure is pretty, sparse, right? You have to read this little orange thing, which is in very small text, and the table here is really about communicating a discount, but if you're uncertain up here about what you're getting, well, you don't really care as much about the discount. Contrast that with another company that does a really nice job of demonstrating not just the units of measure, but also the prices per units of measure in a very easy to skim table that gets all the way down to even the unit costs. By making the units of measure very clear, people don't have to do the math. Instead, they can at a table glance very quickly what they need and what it's going to cost them on a unit basis. When you combine this with graphics that are really clear about quantities in cases or dimensions on labels, a customer doesn't have to think that hard to know what they're getting and how much they're going to pay for it. So by the time they're ready to hit add to cart, they already know most of what they need to know visually before they've even spent any time trying to read this description. Now this is really great when you get a customer coming to your site or your page and they know exactly what they're looking for. They're at the bottom of the funnel, and it's really a question now of, is this the exact right thing for my application, and is the pricing exactly what I need it to be? Oftentimes when customers don't know that information, and that's where Amazon does some really interesting things that used to be really expensive and difficult to implement, but over the years have become much easier. We're all familiar with Amazon's ability to recommend products and how incredible it is at deciding which items to show us based on our browsing history or based on items people have bought together. And if you're using a tool like Algolia or Elasticsearch or Typesense, these are the kinds of technologies that allow for you to replicate this kind of experience without necessarily having to be the guy that develops the algorithm. In this particular case, we're going to be adding recommended products and also browsing history here on the page in order to help those customers who are in the browsing mode, who aren't sure exactly what they're looking for. We're going to be keeping track of what they've looked at so they can go back and forth very easily. And we're going to be keeping track of related items and similar items all programmatically by using a combination of similarity search and previous purchase history from other customers. What a lot of companies will do when they're just using their default WooCommerce or Shopify templates is they might pick a product category and just show other products from this category. But it's far better to do this algorithmically and programmatically. By having these products surface based on real data, real interaction, and real similarity. This requires your catalog to be really well structured and your product model to be really clear. You see, a lot of merchants don't spend nearly enough time thinking about product architecture and their product model, and so they struggle to implement some of these advanced features because they haven't spent the time to get really clear on their taxonomies, on their attributes, and on the ways they're going to communicate different kinds of specifications across their different product lines. All of that is a necessary first step before we can even get into anything really algorithmic. That said, one of the amazing things about current tools out in the marketplace and the state of algorithms is that even if you have a messy-ish product catalog, you can still leverage some of these benefits that we see on Amazon. It just may not be as optimized as it could be. But having something sub-optimized, but pretty good, is better than not having anything at all. The final thing that we're going to be adding for this customer is an AI product guide. So you've probably started to see increasingly on Amazon that underneath products, they have their thing called Rufus, which has a lot of little buttons that people can tab based on frequently asked questions or key levers or constraints that may prevent something. In this particular case, we've already added AI technology to this website. We've already done the product catalog work to make sure that we can implement these items down here. And so the next step for us will be implementing page-specific, product-specific AI guides, make it really easy for customers who are here and uncertain to actually interact with the content on this website in order to de-risk their purchases as much as possible. What's really cool about this technology is not only do we maintain customer history, allowing them to revisit their previous conversations in order to shop for multiple things at one time, we also allow our customer to upload information that will feed the AI without having to expose it to the internet, allowing him to add his own proprietary data to the back end so that the assistant is selling in the way that he would sell himself. Beyond that, we've also got multiple agents on this website, each of whom is specialized in different product categories. This is very different than a traditional chatbot bolted to the corner of a website because these specialized agents, one, have domain expertise that allows for them to provide much richer answers faster. They don't have to search the entire corpus of his catalog or information. It's fine-tuned and with much more precision. In addition, if he's running different promotions for different categories or he has different goals, for instance, he does a lot of custom label quoting, his agent will know when it's time to switch out of the let me help you find a product to let me help you get your custom label put together to let me book you an appointment to talk to a sales rep so that you can get the solution that you need. They're way more nuanced and way more sophisticated than a run-of-the-mill chatbot just sitting in the corner of a website there to basically be a glorified FAQ bot. Since we already have that technology implemented, we'll be bringing it into his product pages, allowing customers who are maybe in the lower part of the funnel but not quite the bottom of the funnel, the ability to de-risk all of their questions intelligently while the agent also gently nudges them towards purchase. After all, the agent itself can also recommend products. So if a customer on the product page isn't exactly in the right place and through Q&A realize they're not looking at the right product, the agent will automatically recommend the right next products for that person to go and look at. In e-commerce, conversion is often a game of inches. If you're starting from something like a default template like this customer is, there's a lot of room for growth. But even if you're not, the power of current technologies like Algolia, like Elasticsearch, like Typesense, like Fall.ai, and the power of AI makes it so much easier to start moving your store towards one that is smarter at making recommendations, better at presenting information, and far more personalized so that your customers can find exactly what they want to accomplish their goals as quickly as possible. And in addition, having a team of shopping assistants, and not just one, who are trained on domain expertise, also make sure that your customers are getting the right suite of products. Often for you as a merchant, this might mean more cross-sells, upsells, and larger cart values than you might have had previously. As we go into 2026, I expect some of these things that we're seeing to be increasingly the norm. And with the increasing vectorization of the internet, more and more multimodal, multimedia, personalized interactions are not just going to be useful for conversions on your own website, they will also be necessary to show up in search in its myriad forms going forward. If you found this helpful, please take a second to click all the buttons that the marketing guy wants you to click. Or if you think that we could help conversion as well, click the link in the description and me or somebody on my team will be happy to talk to you. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.